course, we had a campfire or fellowship fire out there, so we didn't have Romans last week, so we're kind of behind a week, but we're going to pick it up in verse 18, and it's kind of the summation of salvation, but it gets into more of that. You know, Paul's saying you're saved now, okay? And he says you're heirs and you're joint heirs, okay? That you've got an inheritance, but also that you can be a joint heir with Jesus Christ. And then he's going to kind of tell you that you need to go for the glory. You really do need to go for the glory. There's a lot of things that people pursue in this world, even Christians, they pursue, and it's really not worthy of your attention. But this is something you should pursue after. And we'll kind of see it there. But I'm going to read in verse 18 to 25. That's probably all I think that we're covering. Let me see here. Yeah, we are. That's 18 to 25. And then we'll get into each verse. He says, "For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creature waiteth for the manifestation of the sons of God. For the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, but by reason of him who hath subjected the same in hope. Because the creature itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now. And not only they, but ourselves also, which have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, to wit, the redemption of our body. For we are saved by hope, but hope that is seen is not hope. For what a man seeth, why doth he yet hope for? But if we hope for what we see not, then do we with patience wait for it." All right, verse 18 to 25 is going to get into a new doctrine. It's called the doctrine of glorification. And that's when you and I get our new body. And now I think some are going to be more glorified than others, and we'll talk about that in the text. But I'm telling you, anything is an improvement over what you got. So definitely everybody gets a glorified body. Some might be more glorified than others. Look at what he says there in verse 19. He says, the creature waiteth. Verse 23, he says there, waiting for the adoption. Verse 25, he says, then do we with patience wait for it. Well, that's exactly what this is all about. It's waiting. We're all waiting for something. We're waiting for that day when the Lord blows the trumpet and gets us out of here. And he says we're to wait with patience. I don't know how much patience we're supposed to have. I want out of here. Every time I turn on the news and look at what's going on, and I realize that's kind of selfish, because do I want out of here because the pressure's on, or do I want out of here because I want to see Jesus? I do want to see Jesus. I do want that new body, and I do want to get out of this world. And I think they're all legitimate. He talks about us groaning and wanting to be clothed upon from that, that thing from heaven, that house from heaven. But notice he says there in verse 18, he says, "For I reckon." Okay, that's kind of adding something up. People who reckon things, they add up what's going on. He says, "I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that shall be revealed in us." Now, I think Paul is an expert in this field, because why? Because he had been there and had come back, and he would know. That he said, I reckon that it's not even to be compared. And now listen, this is a man, the list of what he went through. I mean, he went through shipwrecks and in deaths oft. What does that mean? How many times did the man die? There's a good possibility he died 3 times. I think one time we know he was stoned to death. What was the other time? I think, and then, of course, the Caesar executed him, but there's, huh? Oh, in the shipwreck, yeah. He said, a day and night have I spent in the deep. What does that mean? So he may have, when he says deaths oft, it could be more than 2. It could be 2, But he suffered all kinds of things. 5 times beaten with rods. I mean, the shipwrecks, he said, in perils of everything you can imagine, robbers and everything. Has anybody in here suffered like that? I haven't. Yeah, I mean, I got in a traffic jam. Oh, poor me. You know, I mean, I have not suffered like that. And yet he said, it's not worthy to be compared with the glory shall be revealed. Man, if Paul's saying that, it's got to be substantial. It's got to be incredible. Now, the match verse for that is 2 Corinthians 4:17. Turn over there. This verse kind of matches this verse perfectly. 2 Corinthians 4:17. He says, 2 Corinthians 4:17, for our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. Now, when he goes on down through here, he does talk about he talks about everybody getting their new body, and it's a glorified body. But notice he used the terms in verse 18, he says, the sufferings of this present time. Well, I didn't have to suffer to get saved. I don't have to suffer to stay saved. He's talking about somebody that is willing, and he's not talking about suffering for your own ignorance and your own, problems that you cause yourself. He's talking about suffering for Christ here. And then he mentions there that for our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us. In other words, when we obey the Lord, when we're in sync with the Lord, when we're doing what the Lord wants us to do, there's suffering involved. There's definitely inconvenience. God will inconvenience you. It's just about anything you do for Him, it's an inconvenience. But He wants you to do it anyway. And if it wasn't, there would be no sacrifice on your part at all, would there? And there can be persecution with it. There can be pain. I mean, we're not through this thing yet. I mean, we may not make it out of here with our lives. The possibility does exist that this whole nation turns on us. One thing's for sure, man, if it didn't surprise you of the overwhelming support for a terrorist organization coming out of all of our colleges and universities, if that didn't even shock you just a little, that's the generations coming up. That's scary. But he says, for our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. Why does it matter? Because what He's giving you is eternal. It's not some plastic trophy they hand you down here or plaque that that you can hang in your office. Whatever's given to you here, you can't keep. You can't keep it. It doesn't mean anything. But if God gives you something, man, I mean, you say, what? Well, he talks about gold, silver, and precious stones. Well, that's what you would adorn yourself with. When a king comes out with those priestly robes, there's glory. I mean, he's got this robe on, and usually it's kind of red or purple or whatever. It's got all precious stones on it and pearls, and wearing a crown. And I mean, maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's the garb that you're wearing for all eternity. It's got precious stones on it. It's got a crown on your head. That in itself, I mean, that could be an eternal weight of glory, but you're going to have it for eternity. That's the thing about it. But compared to what we're going through now, he says it's temporary. He said the suffering is just temporary, and it's light. Temporary and light. I mean, I could think of a lot of missionaries I've read about, and temporary and light is not how I would describe it. But when we get to glory, that's what I'm saying. This thing's going to be mind-blowing of what God is going to give to the saints for the. And I'll tell you what I think. I think He'll reward any suffering, any sacrifice, any inconvenience, any labor on His behalf. I mean, unless you compromise Him out. You compromise Him out, He'll take it back from you. You can lose those things which you have wrought, the Bible says. But I really believe, man, if there is anything on the books, He'll reward you. And where it will leave you breathless is, I could have done more. And it'd be too late. Because I think he's going to be extremely gracious. He said over there, when he gives that thing about the parable of the pounds, that thou hast been faithful over, maybe it's the talents, I can't remember which one. He says, thou hast been faithful over a little, I'm going to make thee ruler over many cities. Why do you say that? If you've only been faithful over a little, maybe you should just rule little. But notice the graciousness of God even in that. I mean, let's face it, do you really deserve anything? Even Paul said the work that he did, he says, I am what I am by the grace of God. And even the work that he did, he said, was by the grace of God. So we don't deserve anything to begin with. I mean, you can't get up there and say, boy, you're going to owe me. God doesn't owe you a thing. So it's his gracious. But I think that there's anything on the books, I think that God will reward you handsomely. And where the rub comes in is you'll realize, I should have did more. It'd be too late. He's telling you now. He's telling you now. You either take heed or you don't. Okay. Yeah, I think of the song, It Will Be Worth It All When We See Jesus. Isn't that what we sing? Look at 1 John chapter 3, verse 1 to 3. 1 John 3, 1 to 3. And actually this passage kind of goes along with verse 19. For the earnest expectation of the creature waiteth for the manifestation of the sons of God. I mean, we're already sons of God, right? I mean, I've been a son of God for, 45, 46 years. But the manifestation of it is finally, man, when we get that new body, it's body, soul, and spirit. I mean, now the body's being overhauled, okay? We've already had our spirit raised from the dead. We've already had our soul washed in the blood of Christ. And now it's time for the body to get that full body makeover that happens at the rapture. That's the manifestation of the sons of God. That's what we're waiting on. We've got everything else. We're just waiting on that. He says there in 1 John 3, 1 to 3, Behold, what manner of love the Father bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. Therefore the world knoweth us not, because it knew him not. Don't expect them to understand you. They don't have any understanding of you. Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. Kind of take a look around, and I mean, you're hoping we turn out better than how we look now. Getting old. He said, Beloved, now are we the sons of God, it doth not appear what we shall be, but we know. Do we? There's a lot of folks don't know that now. We know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him. I don't know if I can apply this, but if it says we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is, I went over to Revelation chapter 1, just took a gander at that appearance of him, man. I'll tell you what. I know we have some type of resurrection body like an angel, but it also says we'll be like him. Have you ever gone over there and read that description of him? With hairs as white as wool and his eyes a flame of fire? It says we'll be like him. I don't know. I know one thing, man. It's going to be a definite improvement over how you look right now. A definite improvement. Talk about some power. It said, But we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. And every man that hath this hope in him purifieth himself, even as he is pure. We've been going over Sunday school about a pre-trib rapture, and how that everybody, it seems like, a good portion of the professing church, is out against it. Well, they're just stealing your hope. This is not an if, this is a when. And it's purifying in the sense that when we start seeing things happening, we start thinking about our conduct. We start thinking about what we're doing for the Lord. We start thinking about, maybe I should be reading my Bible more. Maybe I should be praying. Maybe I should be making sure I get to church if I can make it. I mean, all those things it does with me. Because I'm thinking, man, if this spring, if it happens, the Lord blows the trumpet. I mean, I'm telling you, the thought of it thrills me and terrifies me all at the same time. I'm going to be terrified. I don't know about you. I'm going to be terrified. I'm going to be thrilled and terrified at the same time. You say, why? Man, I'm facing the Creator with eyes as a flame of fire. And that'll be something. I mean, I'll be glad to get out of here, but then I'm going to know what's next. Remember I told you what's next? Judgment seat of Christ is next. And guess who's up first? The ones that were caught up alive. They're first. The first ones judged. Yeah, I kind of wanted to be in the middle somewhere. You know, where the Lord just kind of, you know, maybe got tired of beating on some of them, you know, and it finally comes to me. And there is an indication. I mean, Dr. Ruckman say there could be stripes? I mean, didn't he say that at one time? Beatings. Just think if you're the first one up. Man, it's like, because he said, you know, the last shall be first and the first shall be last. So the last ones he'll judge are what? Huh? Yeah, the apostles. They'll be the last ones he judges. Maybe John the Baptist, I don't know. No, John the Baptist wasn't in the bride. He was a friend of the bridegroom. I don't know what the Baptist briders do with that, but huh? He'll be inside the window looking, or outside the window looking in. Anyway. Verse 20, he says, for the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, but by reason of him who hath subjected the same in hope, because the creature itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. So what we're waiting for is this manifestation of the body. Philippians 3:21. Philippians 3:21 is a good verse. He says, who shall change our vile body, that it may be fashioned like unto his, there's another verse, fashioned like unto his glorious body, according to the working whereby he is able even to subdue all things unto himself. Now, when he says there, the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, it's what God did to the creation. After the fall in the garden of Adam and Eve, God put a curse on it. And that vanity, that vainness, he subjected us to it. He subjected everybody to it. Okay? That is, that everything in this creation is cursed and is falling apart. And we're subject to it. Look at Genesis 3:17. I don't think we understand just how bad this is as far as that curse goes. He says in Genesis 3:17, and unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. And he mentions there in verse 21, he talks about the bondage of corruption. What God did when he cursed that thing, he set in motion what we call the second law of thermodynamics. He set in motion the law of entropy, and that is everything is winding down, falling apart, decaying, wearing out, unless you put energy into it. Dr. Ruckman said this. He was answering some questions, and by the way, somebody finally cornered him about what demons are, and he gave an answer. Because first he didn't answer it, and I mean, he went through the same spiel, you know, and said they're not angels. And he got toward the end, and somebody said, now you said what they were, but you didn't say what they are. And he says, well, you know, ich weiß, he started quoting his German, and he said, I don't know. He goes, but I'll tell you what I think, and that's when we'll talk about that some other time. Anyway, it's too involved to go into. I just wanted to keep you coming. Just wanted to keep you coming to church. Yeah, the thing is, my memory. I don't know if I'll remember it. You just have to remind me. But anyway, but He mentions there the bondage of corruption. He drew these two parallels really good. He said, when you're born, okay, you're at the peak of life right there. And everything from that point starts going downhill. Because why? Because if somebody doesn't start shoving food in your mouth, you're going to die. Right? You'll start going downhill almost immediately. Why? Energy's got to go in. I mean, it's the same with your garden or your field. If you don't put fertilizer out there, if you don't plow that ground, if you don't put energy into it, you're not going to get. You got to put seed into it. You're not going to get anything out of it. Your car, okay, the day you get it, that's it. That's as high as it gets, man. From that point on, it starts wearing. And sometimes they wear pretty quick. Your body, if you don't feed it, you'll die. If you don't take care of it, you'll decay. God cursed the thing, man. But Dr. Ruckman said, the day you get saved, you're here. And it's downhill from there. Unless you put some energy back into it. You'll fall apart. Now, you're saved, but you'll fall apart spiritually. But if you'll put energy back in there, you can maintain it. Just like you maintain that car. I thought that was pretty good. But he's made us subject to that. Everything wears down, everything falls apart, everything decays. And we're just continually trying to keep things, you know how it is? I mean, if you have a home, you know exactly how it is. You're trying to keep that home maintained so it doesn't fall down around you. What we got to remember is that thing's not eternal. And that's really not worth all of our effort. There's some other things that we can do that are more important and that are eternal. There's only a few things you can do that are eternal. I mean, the Word of God's eternal. Souls are eternal. God is eternal. He says, set your affection on things above. And creating that relationship with God, that's not wasted at all. And it doesn't decay. Winning a soul to Christ doesn't decay. It's always there. And that Word of God will always be here. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. So those are things worth spending time into, because everything else will fall apart, including you. It's just a matter of time. So he cursed the ground for man's sake. He said, in sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Up until that time, you say, well, just think about when the Lord comes back. You say, what's he going to do? In the millennium, he puts energy back into this thing. We talk about in entropy, in a closed system, it says entropy is increased. Some call it randomness, some call it chaos, but it's the loss of energy because okay, in fact, I used this in jail the other night, and I believe I was talking about this at the jail, but if I had a cup of coffee with boiling coffee in here, okay, it would eventually get cold if it sat here 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. It would start cooling off, right? But if I dumped it on a tile floor, probably within about 15, 20 seconds, you could touch that liquid and wouldn't burn you at all. It might even be cool by then. You say, why? Because that energy doesn't disappear. It can be neither created nor destroyed. It just dissipates. And the problem is we just got all this energy, it just dissipates, and if you don't put something back into it, you have chaos. So what God's going to do is when he comes back, he puts some energy back into this thing. I mean, when he's talking about renewing things, and I think I made a list here. Where did I do that at? I've got it around here somewhere. I think we're going to get to it in the next verse. But I want you to turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 2. I wish I knew where I did with that. I don't know what I did with it. Somewhere. We'll see it. Ecclesiastes chapter 2. Look what these verses have to say. Look at first one's verse 11. 2:11. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought, and on the labor that I had labored to do, and behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. Why is he? You know, some men look back and they say, look at what I've done, you know. Not Solomon. He says, and the man evidently was brilliant at about everything he did. But he said it's vanity and vexation of spirit. Look at verse 17. Therefore I hated life. That's one of my favorite verses when I'm upset. I said, therefore I hated life. She knows that because she hears me quoted. If something's going wrong or breaking down, I said, therefore I hated life. I believe in being scriptural about everything. Therefore I hated life, because the work that is wrought under the sun is grievous unto me. Well, that's the reason I'm quoting that verse. For all is vanity and vexation of spirit. Why? It's all falling apart on him. What happens at the end? He dies and leaves it to a fool. He left it to Rehoboam, who lost the kingdom. Everything you work for, you know what? You can work all your life, leave it to your kids, and they go out and spend it in about a month. You worked all your life for it. You thought they maybe want to save it and put it back for a rainy day? No. We're going to go blow it tonight. Let's go to Walmart, spend $20,000, $30,000. Look at verse 26. Now, I don't care if I'm gone. What do I care? Verse 26 says, for God giveth to a man that is good in his sight wisdom and knowledge and joy, but to the sinner he giveth travail to gather, to heap up, that he may give to him that is good before God. This also is vanity and vexation of spirit. I mean, everything's vanity and vexation of spirit. Why? Because you can't keep it. Anything down here you can't keep. So don't set your heart on it. If God gives you something, fine. Enjoy. He giveth us richly all things to enjoy, with the understanding that we can't keep it. We'll get it later. We'll get it back later. And when we get it back later, we'll get it back eternally. And don't waste all your energy on it. Why? It's energy wasted because it will fall apart. So the things that you're dreaming about, why? Bondage of corruption. Till God comes back. And even the millennium's not perfect. Okay? There's still death. But he's putting some energy back into the creation, and at least, somewhere I've got a list. I don't know. Anyway, we'll find it. Oh, I know. Jesus Christ can invigorate the sun. In fact, we're going to look at these verses, so I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's talk about the glorious liberty of the children of God. You see, what is that? That's the freedom from that corruption. When you're finally free, you're no longer under that curse. And even in the millennium, we're not under that curse. We're not going to die. We're not going to age. We're not going to get rusty. Look at 1 Corinthians 15, 53 to 54. Most of you know this. But he says, for this corruptible must put on incorruption. This mortal must put on immortality. So when this corruptible shall put on incorruption, this mortal shall put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory. We're not going to be corrupting after that. That's the glorious liberty of the children of God. We're free from all that. All right, look at verse 22. He says, for we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now. Now, I'm going to say this, and I am not an environmentalist, okay? Because they've got the wrong idea. Yes, the planet's falling apart. Yes, the planet's wore out. Yes, the fields are wore out. Yes. And you can't do anything about it. Selling you carbon credits is not going to fix it. It's just somebody lining their pocket with your money. Can't you figure that out? They can't stop this. Only till They can't do anything about it. Look at Isaiah 11, verse 6 to 8. Here's some things that the Lord's going to do when he comes back. Very briefly. Now, if man could do this, then we could talk. But the things I'm going to show you, man can't do any of them. But they think that, we can save the planet. No, you can't. Because you cannot do what Jesus Christ can do. This planet will fall apart without him. You see what he do? Well, when God created it, he put all the energy into it, and then when it fell, he no longer put any energy in it. And that's why it's falling apart. Because God will have to continually put energy into something to maintain it. And he's not doing it. It's fallen. In Isaiah 11, verse 6 to 8, it says, the wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the kid, the calf and the young lion, and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. You got children playing with beasts. Dangerous animals. You got lions and leopards and bears, oh my, and it said the cow and the bear shall feed, and their young ones shall lie down together. They're out there eating together in the field, eating grass. The lion shall eat straw like the ox. It says the sucking child shall play on the hole of an asp. That's a venomous snake. Here this thing's playing, this thing right here playing right next to its den. And that snake will not bite that child. It will not bite that child. He said he'll put his hand on the cockatrice's den. No problem. Now look at Isaiah 30, and look at verse 26. Let me show you this one. If you think that's going on right now for these amillennialists, then I want to take you to the zoo, my treat. Okay? And I want you to stick your hand inside that lion's cage or the polar bear or whatever. Just stick your hand in there and leave it in there for just a little bit. I want you to try to pet the furry creature. I'll tell you what one girl did. I read about this. She was, and I think it was right in one of our zoos here in this state. She was feeding a polar bear, and she wasn't doing it correctly. Wasn't following protocol, and she was throwing in grapes. He was eating grapes. And when she went like that, she put her hand into the bar, and he grabbed right at the tip of her finger. And before she could react, he went and took it all the way up and snapped it off at the elbow. He just pulled her right in and snapped it off. She lost her arm to a polar bear. If that was the millennium, a kid could have been on the back of the thing riding it. We're not in the millennium. Just go to the zoo and prove it to yourself. You got 4 limbs. You can spare one. Just to prove it to yourself. Look at Isaiah 30, 26. Moreover, the light of the moon shall be as the light of the sun, and the light of the sun shall be sevenfold, as the light of 7 days in the day that the Lord bindeth up the breach of his people and healeth the stroke of their wound. Look, now, the reason I say that because Isaiah 9:13 says, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that the plowman shall overtake the reaper, and the treader of grapes him that soweth seed, and the mountains shall drop sweet wine, and the hills shall melt. What he's saying there is there's going to be 3 crops a year. You've never seen a thing where you could just keep a rotation of crops one right after the other, to where the guy is getting ready to sow the field as you're reaping it. He can sow it immediately. Something's got to change. We can't do that now. We have to amend that field before we can put anything back into it. And we have now sunlight that is 7 times. So we can't have that. That radiation will burn us up. That ultraviolet, man, it'll just eat us up. Well, first, Jesus Christ can invigorate the sun, increase the canopy. Can he? He just increased the ozone layer, make it 3 times what it is now. He can increase the light of the sun, which would increase the growth. He could amend the soil, couldn't he? Can he amend the soil? Well, sure he can. Can he rejuvenate the seed that Monsanto messed up? Can he? Sure he can. He can clean the waterways. I mean, what we're trying to do, what man is trying to do in cleaning up this environment, Jesus Christ will do in a day. It's just because they can't do none of this, and all they're doing is making you pay for something that won't help. Now, I am for managing the environment. I've always been for that. There are some things that just need to be managed. And you know, you do that around your place. You manage your garbage, don't you? Well, sure. And that should be done anywhere on the planet. You know, I don't like it that we have. I mean, China is one of the major polluters. You know, I mean, we get all these rules and regulations we have to follow, and they don't have to follow any. You practically can't even breathe over there. You got to wear a mask all the time because of all the soot in the air. Well, it needs to be managed. I mean, there are technologies that can help clean that thing up. Anyway, but the Lord can cause it to rain every day before you even get up. Think about that. Imagine, one of the things I noticed, we were in the Bahamas one time, and it always rained. I mean, it was like a couple hours before daylight, it would always rain. But then when you got up, it was like maybe that's why they call it paradise, because it rained while you were asleep. And then you had a sunny day. Maybe that's what it'll be like. But you know, not one person will go hungry in the millennium. And the way that is because the Creator's back. And you know what he's going to do? He's going to put energy back in. Now, that's not his crowning achievement. The new heavens and the new earth and the new Jerusalem, now that'll be his crowning achievement. But he's going to give the world a taste. He's going to give mankind a taste. Well, I can do this for you right now, but just wait till later. I'm looking forward to that. Okay, verse 23 to 25, and I got to finish up here. It says, not only they, but ourselves also, which have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves, grown within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, to wit, the redemption of our body. For we are saved by hope, but hope that is seen is not hope. But what a man seeth, why doth he yet hope for? But if we hope for what we see not, then do we with patience wait for it. All right, couple things there. He mentions some groanings going on there in verse 23. We groan within ourselves. I think it increases with age, the groanings. Now, some are spiritual groanings which cannot be uttered. Mine are uttered. Romans 8:26 says, likewise the Spirit also helpeth our infirmities, for we know not what we should pray for as we ought, but the Spirit itself maketh intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. So, a lot of times the Spirit of God, you're praying one thing, the Spirit of God's praying another because He knows what you need more than you do. And sometimes we just groan. Anyway, that's the groanings of our flesh. The old man doesn't go quietly into that good night. He just doesn't. He claws. That's one thing I despise about him. I don't want to claw my way out of this world at all. I want to be settled on that. But I know how he is. You know, you start, something goes wrong with you, you know, next thing you know, you're just like, gotta save my life. And I'm like, well, why? I think I want to think about it for a thing. I could go home now. It all depends what you're leaving behind. It all depends who's dependent on you, right? If you got too many people dependent on you, maybe you want to go home. I don't know. But the Bible says to live is Christ and to die is gain. Right? Y'all believe that, don't you? Now, I'm not saying go out and commit harry-carry. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that. I believe it, but I'm just saying, I just don't want to scratch my way out of this life that, you know, this is all there is, man. If this is all there is, I am very disappointed. Very. I'm looking for something better. He mentions there that the adoption and the redemption, they're equated together. And the redemption of the body is when you get the new body. When you look at a couple verses over there in Ephesians 1, you can teach eternal security with this verse. And two verses in Ephesians 1:13, Ephesians 4:30. Because he tells you you're sealed when you get saved in Ephesians 1:13. And then he tells you you're sealed unto the day of redemption in Ephesians 4:30. And Ephesians 4:30 tells you what the day of redemption is, and that's when you get the new body. There's no gaps there. Because you get a sinless, immortal body. The adoption, remember the verse we looked at earlier in verse 15, it says, "For you have not received the spirit of bondage again to fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption, whereby we cry, Abba, Father." Got to break it down this way. That's kind of like the paperwork. The spirit of adoption is, the adoption is underway. You've got all the paperwork, everything signed. You're just waiting for the child to be delivered. But he says, we're waiting for the adoption, to wit, the redemption of our body. That's the presentation. That's the manifestation of the sons of God. That's when we're presented to the Father, and the Father says, I've been waiting on you a long time. Because you have that. We have that now. And spiritually speaking, we cry, Abba, Father, but we've never been presented to Him, have we? And that's what this is talking about. The redemption of the body is when you get your new body at the rapture. And that's when you're going to be presented to God the Father. Now he mentions there in verse 24 and 25, he says we're saved by hope. Hope in the Bible is never, the hope that God gives is never based on if. And somehow that's, I don't know why that has crept in our culture about the word hope, where I hope so. Like it may or may not happen. That's not the word hope in the Bible. It's not if it's going to happen, it's always when it's going to happen. That's the hope that we got there. Look at one more verse here and we'll be done for the evening. Hebrews chapter 6. Actually, two verses. Hebrews chapter 6. Verse 17 to 19. He says there, wherein God, willing more abundantly to show unto the heirs of promise the immutability of His counsel, confirmed it by an oath, that by two immutable things, He spoke it and then He took an oath on it. By two immutable things in which it was impossible for God to lie, we might have a strong consolation, who have fled for refuge to lay hold upon the hope set before us. Now, I realize he might be talking to Israel here, but I want you to see something about the hope. Which hope we have as an anchor of the soul. When he talks about our blessed hope in Titus 2:13, looking for that blessed hope, that is the anchor for your soul and mine. It's the only thing holding you down and giving you some stability. It says, both sure and steadfast, and which entereth in that within the veil. It's sure, and that hope is not just an anchor, it's sure and it's steadfast. And I'll tell you what, Christians are getting talked right out of their hope. Why? They're wondering if it's going to happen now, not when. I'm just wondering when. This year, next year, the year after that. I know it's going to happen soon. I believe it's going to be soon. I think sooner than we might think. The question, not in my mind, if the rapture is going to happen, if the manifestation of the sons of God is going to take place. My only question is when. That's it. So I am waiting for it patiently. I'm waiting for it. He says, looking, what does he say? Titus 2:13, looking for that blessed hope and the glorious appearing. They're simultaneous. The blessed hope is the resurrection. The blessed hope is the rapture. And the glorious appearing happens at the same time. That's when we meet Him in the air. Change to meet Him in the air. looking for that blessed hope and the glorious appearing of the great God and our Savior. I'm not looking for the Antichrist. I'm not looking for the rebuilt temple. I am looking for the Lord from heaven. You got to keep that thing in mind there. And the problem these guys got is they can't discern the difference between that rapture and the rapture that happens at the end of the tribulation. They got them confused. And if you were to take all that scripture and combine it together, you'd be confused too. But Paul's talking about a rapture where you're not, listen, if I'm not looking for if I know I'm going to be here through the tribulation, guess what I'm looking for? I'm not looking for the Lord. I'm looking for the Antichrist to show up, aren't you? So I'd know when the thing begins. I'd be looking for the temple. But he tells me not to look for that. He says you're to look for the Lord. Why? Because it's going to happen first. Get us out of here. So don't let them take it from you, because they will. They'll talk you right out of it. You'll think they got good arguments, but they don't. They can't rightly divide the Bible. And we'll be looking at that more in Sunday school later. So, any questions about tonight? Well, I think part of it is I think he's talking about us, and it may be the body when he says the creature, but then he likens it to the entire creation.
Well, that's what I was wondering. When he talks about the creature, he says not only they, but also ourselves.
Yes.
The difference between the creature and us.
Yes. And when the Lord comes back, they enter into the glorious liberty of He's going to take the curse off. At least he's going to take a good portion of it, to where even the creation, which has been groaning and travailing, this world groans and travails, not for you to, clean it up, but for the Lord to come back and put some energy into it. That's what it's waiting on. It's waiting for its creator. And just as we are not going to be subject to that corruption anymore, he's going to lighten that thing for the creation. It's just like, it's waiting to be delivered. The creation's waiting to be delivered, not just us. And that's why it's groaning and travailing. In fact, I must have missed that because I had a point on that. Because it looks like first he's talking about Christians, but then it's like he's talking about everything. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, if the Lord didn't do that, nothing would change if he didn't, how would he help the world if he didn't take off some of the curse? About the only thing it looks like he really doesn't change is death, and even then, it looks like longevity will be back. He said a child will die at 100 years of age. 100. So they may be living like Methuselah. 969 years? You might live almost all the way to the end of the millennium. If you were born in the millennium at the very beginning, so he's going to be bringing it back to what happened in the garden. A good portion of it, not completely, because death is not completely ruled out. But he's going to be the crops, the water, the sun, the animals. He's going to be taking that curse back off of them. And that's going to, everybody says they're looking for a paradise. They're looking, what's the word I'm thinking of? Utopia. God will bring in that utopia with his kingdom. There won't be a hungry man on the planet. There may not even be a disabled man on the planet. Can you imagine that? No blind, no deaf, no, ailments can go away. Diseases go away. It'd be incredible, wouldn't it? And maybe with that sun, maybe, something about sunlight is a cleansing agent. Maybe that'll clean everything up. I don't know. But no matter how bad we pollute it, he's not worried about it. Man gets, no, they just want your money. We're chumps. We really are. We've allowed this. Anyway, anybody else? Yeah.
No.
No death among the human race.
That was the question. Were animals created to be eternal like people were? And they don't have souls, I'm not asking that, but were animals created to live forever? What is all?
I don't know. I don't know. That'd be interesting. There's our question whether Adam and Eve had to partake of the tree of life to live forever or not. If they did, the animals may not have been eternal in the sense that their bodies would have wore out. Because everybody that goes into the millennium, from the tribulation and all that, they all have to partake of the tree of life. So I don't know the answer to that exactly. Anybody else? Anybody know the answer? Raise your hand.